This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to the podcast. What do we got, Tom?
Well, today we're going to actually, for the first time, we're going to be talking about a conspiracy in history. We don't really do this too much, right?
You hate
kind of want to talk
conspiracies.
about the fact, I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy.
That's why we don't
at
do
all.
it.
Yeah. But well, some of them are kind of out there. Like, I don't think aliens are helped us win the American Revolution and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get into that now. So we're going to talk about one that has I don't know how much truth is to it, but definitely has some signs to back it up, at least from what we know from history, right?
Yep.
And so we're going to be looking at a lot of the history conspiracies around Adolf Hitler's death in April of 1945.
Yep. And we're recording this on April 1st, so I guess it's fitting.
There you go. There you go.
And we kind of wrestled with this idea, like, we should do a podcast on Stalin, we should do a podcast on maybe Mussolini, or maybe the old three, and then do Hitler. And we kind of fell into this idea that, Hitler is such a complicated figure itself, and it's never an easy conversation. So we decided to focus not on his life, but on his death. So today's topic
and the conspiracies around it.
Yeah, we're going to kind of run through what actually happened as far as history is concerned.
What history tells us, right?
Yes. Then we'll go into some of the more predominant or prominent, I should say, conspiracy theories with regards to his death. The one that's probably the most famous, especially lately since the Hunting Hitler TV show on History Channel, which is the fact that he escaped to Argentina. So we'll discuss the ideas as to why that came about and the evidence for that. And then I think at the end we'll kind of debunk some of that using, today's DNA evidence. I mean, this case is really still very, very recent. I mean, the most recent scientific study with regards to trying to put this theory of Hitler's death to rest was like 2018 or 2019. So this is fairly recent.
Yeah. There's a lot out there. Now, we're not saying Hitler's still alive now. He's dead. None of these conspiracy theories mention that he's still alive now. A lot of them say he died in 1962 or he died in 1950, or a couple of them actually have him surviving to the 80s. But there's nothing about him still being alive, trying to plot this thing. It's not like what was that game we used to play when we were kids, like Wolfenstein or something like that, right? When he's like a cyborg and he's trying. We're not, or he's on the moon or something like that. When we're not going into those outlandish conspiracy theories. These are more ones that even the U.S. government was looking into.
Yeah, like FBI, CIA. Like these are the more valid ones.
They were trying to figure this out because they did not want Hitler to get away.
Yep.
They wanted, if anyone was not going to be allowed to survive World War II, it was definitely going to be Hitler. And he knew this. And a lot of the Nazis knew this. And that's why, and obviously we talk about Grey Wolf and going to Argentina. A lot of Nazis did go to Argentina.
Yes.
Those descendants of the Nazis are still there today. I mean, we'll get into it, but it's something else. It's different. It's probably something that a lot of people don't fully realize. You always go, oh yeah, there's Germans in Argentina, but it's more than just some Germans in some of these places. It's a huge number.
So let's get into the Hitler's death conspiracy, how he died, and potentially did he, or when did he, and all that good stuff. I think we kind of, again, before we get serious about this, I mean, have you looked into some of these conspiracy theories? Like Hitler went to the moon. Did you hear about that one?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, no. Those are where. That's when I start to get like, all right, let's just stop right there.
I know. It's crazy. There's actually there's a group of people that believe that Hitler was so ahead of his time, and ahead of NASA, really, that he went to the moon. And I mean, these are the same people that more or less.
I think they actually made like Elvis Presley. But I think there's even like a Netflix show, a movie or something like that about. It's like a movie called like Nazi UFOs, and in it, like, it's like the Nazis went to the moon towards the end of World War II, and they've been plotting up on the moon ever since. And they come back like...
Yeah, well, that's the other one. So the other theory is that he actually was friends with an alien. And again, these people actually believe this, that like he acquired... Yeah, they're like aliens took him and he like went to join them to like take control of the world. Then there's ones that he cloned himself. And then you get into the whole like, okay, maybe he went to Argentina. Maybe he really died from Parkinson's disease and it wasn't really Hitler in a bunker. Maybe he escaped to Antarctica. Or maybe like he went to San Diego. That's another California. Because they said there was like a number of interconnected buildings in San Diego, California, which potentially from a satellite picture may look like a shape of a Nazi swastika. So therefore, there must be something with that. And again, we're not going to get into those, although those are kind of
Yeah.
funny, and I think would be a nice light way to ease into the topic. But let's get serious. All right, let's talk about Adolf
The
Hitler's.
actual history,
Yes,
right? So basically, what's going on? We're in 1945. The Third Reich is doomed. Like it's obviously they're not going to have any real chance. But Hitler and a lot of those, even it's not even I wouldn't even say his generals. Again, I know you've seen the movie a bunch of times. I know there's like those memes about it, or like those the movie Downfall,
I
right?
love that movie. What a
Right
great
when they're
movie! That won
showing it.
Oscars.
Yeah, it was a good movie. But yeah, I like the students, or I know a lot of them know it from like that one scene when they're telling like the war's basically over, and he's
Hmm.
like banging on the table and saying all that stuff, and they kind of put like the other different closed caption in the bottom. You ever see
Yeah,
those? Like
yeah, yeah,
Chuck Norris or like
yeah,
Superman and
yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah, those are that's really what how students in the past have
But
talked
for our
about it.
listeners, the movie is called Downfall, and
Downfall.
it's dubbed because it's, or you could just get subtitles because it's a German movie. It
Yeah.
won Oscars for like the best foreign film, and I would, and I guess you as well, strongly recommend it for
If
those
you're
that are
looking at it,
interested.
it was apparently written by taken from the diaries, right, of some of the
From the
people that were
diaries,
there.
actually, and firsthand account interview of his secretary that was
The
there to
secretary,
the
yeah,
very last second,
yeah,
and
and
she
actually knew
wouldn't
Ava
talk
Brown,
about
yeah.
it. Yeah, she wouldn't talk about it until she finally decided to give an interview, and then they filmed the movie based on her entire first-hand account. Like she was there, saw the body be taken out. She was literally there for the whole thing. The movie is amazing, so highly recommend it. It's called Downfall. I don't know if it's any of the streaming services, but again, if you find this topic interesting, that's where you guys need to go.
Absolutely. So basically, you have you have the Stalin, the Soviets coming in from the east, right? The Americans are coming in from the west. They're pushing in at Berlin, and all
Mhm.
hope is lost. Hitler's in this bunker,
He gets there in
and
January 1945. He
gets in
decides
January,
that's
and
it.
he
I'm going to
does.
Berlin.
He is there's some last footage of seeing Hitler alive, confirmed footage of Hitler alive. Maybe we'll get to
Hmm.
some of that unconfirmed footage. Is he's basically going to all these young soldiers. He's giving them medals and stuff like that as they get ready to defend Berlin before he goes into the bunker. And you can see he's visibly not in good shape.
Oh,
Any
he's
of the journals
shaking
about
like
his doctors,
hardcore.
he definitely had he had Parkinson's. Plus, he was taking all this other medication, to wake up, to go to sleep. He was basically there's a great documentary series on I guess History Channel years ago called High Hitler. But all the
Yeah.
drugs that he was taking to wake up, go to sleep, have the energy. Plus, he had a lot of chronic diseases and stuff like that.
I mean, they gave him
Which
like cocaine drops every single
yeah,
morning
yeah.
to his eyes, like into his eyes, which is
Yeah,
insane. And then,
he had he had a whole bunch of stuff,
yeah,
ailments. You know, whatever. It's Hitler. I don't care how many ailments he has. That's fine.
yeah, yeah.
Pack him on. But he was not in exactly great health at this time.
No.
So they're saying, obviously he wasn't going to survive much longer anyway. And according to history, basically, he's in the bunker. He's talking about right divisions and platoons that don't really exist, and he's
Yep.
expecting them to come and reinforce Berlin. And they basically tell him, "Listen, this is not going to happen." Then he sees all of his generals leave. Like they're leaving, they're trying
Yep.
to escape. So he decides to kill himself, and that's kind of the narrative history took, right? That Hitler kills himself on April 3rd, 1945. Ava Brown also kills his
I thought it
shepherds,
was
his
April
dogs.
30th. It might be April
April 30th.
30th.
Did I say
Yeah.
April
You
3rd?
said
I mean
3rd.
April
Yeah.
30th. Sorry. I mean
Um,
April 30th, 1945. And that's it. He shot himself, and Ava Brown took cyanide, and his bodies were then taken outside and burned as, the Allies are bombing Berlin and as the Soviets are closing in.
so absolutely. I'm going to kind of elaborate on some of that a little bit. But as you mentioned, there's two things that really kind of drive him over the edge. One is he comes to find out that his like second in command is discussing surrender terms
It's surrounded with
with
allies.
the Americans, right? And the Soviets. And at that point, that kind of hits him like, all right, what the heck, right? Like, why is this happening? Then, like you were mentioning, there's so much bombing that the only way Hitler, because he was hiding in his bunker in the middle of Berlin. By the way, I went to that site
It's a park.
maybe
Is it
like
a parking lot
4 years
now?
ago. Yeah, it's actually a playground
Yeah, because they
next
don't want to
to.
make this. There's not even a plaque or anything because
No,
they don't want anyone to
literally.
know.
No, actually, there
Yeah.
is. There's like a little
There's a
sign there
little.
now.
Yeah, it says
Because I
something. Oh
took a
yeah, there
picture
is.
by it.
Like it's like don't ever forget, or like the horrors
Something.
that took place
Well,
here
a
or something.
block away, almost
But it's not a lot
across
of
the
stuff, right?
street. Yeah, but almost across the street is the German Holocaust Memorial, like almost directly across the street where the bunker was today. So maybe I'll post some pictures of that on our website. But what you have here is he's in his bunker, and the only way to really know what's going on is because of radio communications. And radio wire, believe it or not, is connected to a balloon. which is like, talk about technology. Huh? That's like flying high above the Chancellery building, which is underneath which there is this bunker. And that gets shot down. So now they really don't know what's going on. And Hitler's already finding out that his second in command is trying to give away the army and sign this armistice. And he's, like you said, he's raging. He's completely PO'd. And then he finds out that his good friend, Benito Mussolini, is killed in Italy. And after Benito is killed,
that was when
that's
he
what really drives him over the edge.
well,
Yeah.
because we got to give a background. When Mussolini's killed, he's more than just killed. Him and his
Yeah.
mistress are hung upside down, and their corpses are just there being
Mutilated.
beaten, mutilated
Yeah.
for days, for
Yep.
days. And Hitler doesn't want that happening to him because he
Yep.
knows Stalin is not. At this point, they know that the Allies are kind of slowing down. They're kind of letting the Soviets come in. That's a future
Yep.
podcast, kind of. I guess we can talk why that
Yeah.
happened, everything. But they're letting the Soviets take Berlin, which kind of complicated things because the Soviets were, remember, they fought a brutal war
Yep.
with the Germans. It's one thing that what we did, yes, and it was a brutal war, but the Soviets did a much longer
Well, they
and
called it the
much more
rape of
intense.
Berlin. I mean, once the
Obviously,
Soviets got in there,
the Soviets went
yeah,
ballistic.
yeah,
It was not a good time. So the people of Berlin knew they had to fight, fight for their death, and Hitler knew what would happen to him if Stalin caught him, if
yeah.
Stalin got him. And there are
Especially
some
since,
theories. There are some conspiracy theories. A funny one actually about that, which if that Stalin was the one that got Hitler, that the
oh
Soviets took him.
yeah,
We'll talk about.
but yeah. So like you said, yeah, Hitler's just freaked out that they're gonna like publicly show, mutilate his body just like what they did to Mussolini. So that's why he decides to do what he does, and this is like kind of pretty elaborate. I mean, these guys, he basically starts talking to his doctor, like, all right, what's the best way for me to kill myself? And the doctor tells him, well, the surest way is to do two things: to bite on a cyanide pill and shoot yourself in the head at the same time. And that was just like the safe thing. And he goes, all right, let's do it. So they brought these cyanide capsules, and Hitler tried it first on his dog Blondie. It was a
Yeah.
German Shepherd. He loved this dog. And that morning, he basically puts a pill, cyanide pill, inside the dog's mouth, crushes it, and the dog dies. And that's how they're like, all right, this is going to work. And then Hitler and Ava Braun, who was his longtime mistress, decide that they're going to get married, which is another kind of creepy thing. So they literally have this little ceremony where she becomes Mrs. Hitler. And they really are only married for like less than 2 days, because after they get married, that's when things really start to kind of come into play. And he decides what he's going to do. He's ready for it. They say goodbye to everyone. They go into their room, into their study, shut the door, and Hitler's personal bodyguard, is standing right outside the door. The secretary, who eventually also tells the story, is right outside the door. And, you know, this is when you hear the big bang and the, what do you
In
call
the
it?
movie too, Downfall.
Yeah, and his guard goes in there, and we know this because the guard was actually alive until like early 2000s. This guy, like,
Yeah.
he
He
gave so
says
many
Hitler's dead.
interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's like,
so
I saw Hitler's body. Like, what do you want me to say?
100%.
Like,
Yeah, so he said he walked in there.
he was a loyal
And
hit, but yeah, go ahead.
he was dead. No, he was like, there's no question about it. Hitler was literally,
Yeah.
he said there was a hole in the side of his head where he shot himself, and there was a terrible smell within there, which is associated often with like almonds. I think they said almonds, right? Or cashews or almonds or something like that.
Yeah.
And they said that is reminiscent of the cyanide itself. And then they saw Ava Brown right next to him on a couch. So while he's slumped over, there's blood. They said about the size of a plate worth of blood that had dripped from Hitler's head onto the couch and then the carpet. And so they're both clearly dead. And as Hitler's orders were very specific, it was basically burn me right away, because I do not want the same thing to happen to me that happened to Mussolini. Like, I don't want anyone to see my body. So his personal bodyguard and a couple other people, they wrap him in the carpet, and then they take him out back. But the problem is that because Berlin at this point is literally in ruins, like there's nothing in Berlin, so they're trying to burn his body, but they don't have enough gas to burn his body. So they literally start going into they start going to the cars of the German high command and try and like literally siphon gas. They're taking gas out of tanks
Yeah.
to have enough gas to burn Hitler and Ava's body. And the problem is that because it's in a shallow, it's right next to the Chancellery and outside the bunker, because it's in like a shallow little, it's not a grave, I would say like a dugout. It was fairly windy. This is April. and they said that the bodies just would not burn, so they needed more gas. So they kept on going and trying to get more gas, which is so hard to get. And it took about 2 hours for the
A couple
bodies to,
hours it was
yeah,
burning. Yeah.
yeah, for the bodies to fully. And this is where it becomes interesting because they said that the bodies more or less fully decomposed, like they burned for 2 hours and were fully decomposed. As for the rug itself with blood on it, that was also. Um, Burned as well. The couch, however, was not, which also comes into play later on when we talk about DNA evidence and whatnot. But for the most part, Hitler's dead. Those that are in a bunker basically send a telegram to the German high command stating that Hitler's dead. The world finds out on May 1st, so the next day, the world finds out that Hitler's dead officially through the radio waves. And they said that he died fighting for his nation. And that's pretty much it. But now Stalin is like, no, 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 I want to know if he's dead. So right away,
Stalin wants the body. Stalin wants the
yes,
body. He
within
wants
two
proof.
days, he's like, get in there and I want this body. So the Russians make it to the scene within like 48 hours. And
Yeah,
like,
they
this
get
is
there
where it
quick.
gets
Yeah,
interesting.
if he didn't kill himself then, he was gonna. It was not going to be easy. Yeah, the Russians were closing in.
Yes. So now, once they get there, the Russians kind of find this kind of to be interesting, right? Because supposedly, like, what did the Russians say? What supposedly happens here?
Well, they get there. Well, there's a couple of different
Yeah,
things with
go.
this, but they basically get there, right? And they do find the body, supposedly, correct?
Supposedly. Yep.
So they find the bodies and they take them back to Russia. And even with that, Stalin's still not totally
On board.
convinced
Yeah.
on board. A lot of people's argument, this is why we get into conspiracy theories too, that Stalin, the one reason why Stalin always said Hitler's still alive, and he was saying it's at the Nuremberg trial,
Yeah,
Stalin.
literally,
Like,
he's
no.
the one that started this rumor. They're like,
Stalin's
"What do you
like,
think about Hitler?" And he's like, "I think he's in Argentina."
yeah, he said Spain or
Stalin said
Argentina.
that.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
And they're saying, why did Stalin do that? He said that basically the body discovered by soldiers was a very poor double. This is what Stalin's saying when people are
Yep.
asking about it. And they think one reason he might be doing that is because he's trying to make the Allies look bad.
Yep.
That like they let Hitler escape, but really it was the Soviets coming in first. And that he wanted, it was basically the beginning of the Cold War.
Yeah,
But anyway,
he was messing with the United States
yeah, he's
credibility.
messing with the United States. He's messing with Churchill and stuff like that. But even
Yep.
Churchill was kind of worried that Stalin was. Even Eisenhower later in says, "Listen, for there is most of the proof is that Hitler is dead, but there's no evidence to prove that Hitler is dead."
Yep.
That's what like something that Eisenhower said later on.
Yeah, because they were afraid that he was going to go to Argentina and start the Fourth Reich.
That
Like,
was
this
something
was
that
a
people were always
fear.
afraid of.
Yeah.
It was a real fear because you didn't want him to. You needed to get Hitler. You needed to get Hitler. World War II was not fully going to be out until you had Hitler. And even in 1947, there was a poll, and 51% of Americans believed that Hitler was still alive.
Yeah, I saw that.
So it's not like they're just like people are like, yeah, Hitler's out there. Like, where's the body? But what basically happens as history has gone on is that they had some fragments, right? Bone fragments.
Yeah, so that's what we
skull
come to find
fragments.
out. It wasn't full bodies. It was more like
Yeah,
skull fragments
skull
and
fragments
dentals.
and dental records.
Yes, well, not
And
records.
it's
Well, dental, like
dental
dentures, right? Dentures, or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a skull, right? There's a skull with a bullet hole in it. This is Hitler, right?
And we should also say that this was all top secret, hidden by KGB until not really 1991 is when we really kind of they're doing their stuff in the 70s, right? The 70s they're doing testing on it.
Well, no, well they do testing on it later on. Well, they're looking at it and they confirm, all right, they believe it's Hitler. And
Yes.
in the 90s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the West kind of finds out about this.
Yep.
But it's not until the mid 2000s. I think it's like 2009 or 2014. I've seen different reports, but I think it's actually the latter, where they actually do some DNA testing on it because it actually has DNA, and it comes back that the skull fragments cannot be Hitler because the skull fragments are that of a middle-aged woman.
Yep, 40-year-old woman.
That's what really starts a lot more of these rebirth of a lot of these conspiracy theories. Like, wait a minute, so this skull that even the Soviets, this is Stalin saying, no, Hitler's still alive, whatever, but he still says he has this.
He was messing with everybody. He knew. Yeah, he knew.
He knew Hitler was dead, or he believed it in his heart anyway. Hitler was dead, but he had I have Hitler's skull. But now you find out that listen, when they're not saying, I'm not saying Hitler survived this, but the skull that history has said this is Hitler is not Hitler. Yep. That's a fact. There's no historian that's arguing that. They're like, listen, we were wrong. That's not Hitler's skull. Yep. Maybe it could have got switched somewhere. Who knows? Whatever. There's so much things that could have happened. But the skull that was marked Adolf Hitler is not Adolf Hitler's skull. And when people find that out, when that is broken to the world, that starts to change things. That starts to change. Now, wait, right? So we don't have evidence. And as soon as that happens, that's going to get a lot more conspiracies. That's going to give a lot of fuel to the fire that he escaped to Argentina and things like that. Just because you don't have that unrefutable evidence that no, he's dead. Here's a bullet hole here's a skull with a bullet hole in it. Because
Yeah.
now that's not him. It's not even. It wasn't Ava Brown either.
No, no. We should also mention that when Stalin, because Stalin is doing all this on a down low, right? He's trying to find out, and he finds out very quickly in 1940, like within 46, part of the remains that were found there were their dental dentures. And luckily for us, Hitler actually had X-rays done at his dentist that were done in 1944. So Stalin had, well, not personally, but Stalin's men tracked this dentist, this Hitler's personal dentist, and found those files. And the way the X-ray is done, you actually see most of Hitler's skull as well. It goes like up to his eyes with the way they did it back then. First of all, I think he only had 4 real teeth by then. Everything else
Yeah.
was metal. But they were able to, in 1946, confirm based on the dental records. Stalin knew, like, all right, that's why he also thought the skull was also part of it. But the dental wise, like he's like, yeah, all right, this is definitely it. And then furthermore, even before Stalin's death, they also analyzed the couch, which had the blood on it. And back then, the DNA was nowhere near what it is today, studies, but they were able to confirm that the DNA on that couch was type A, which also, based on Hitler's medical records, did um, did kind of match. So for its like rudimentary 1940s style science, Stalin knew that Hitler was dead. And yet he purposely still spread this idea of like, oh, maybe he's not, right?
And that was more of just a Cold War ploy, make the
Yeah.
Allies look bad.
A few things that were discovered in 2009. The exit wound from the gunshot, they said it was around 6 millimeter wide. And they also said the bullet fired was fired out of like a cool, damp bone. They were able to figure that out, which means it indicated the fact that upon impact, when that bullet went into that particular skull, that person was either still alive or it was very shortly after that person's death. So some people believe that maybe this is Ava Brown's skull, and therefore, to be safe, they also shot her as they put her into this fire, because it also, the skull section also shows that it was burned. And therefore, they're like, all right, so it kind of makes sense that it might have come out of the same ground where they also found these teeth remnants. And yet, you know what I
These
mean? Like,
conspiracies
there's
still.
conspiracy theories here, right?
Because it's not. They want. It's not like what you had saw at Mussolini, right?
Yeah,
Or we saw with Tojo. It was a
yeah,
little bit different. So they weren't executed. They didn't have like the photographical proof, whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
And Hitler's such this larger than life figure also to a lot of people because he's the embodiment of the Nazis, which is this ultimate evil that the world was fighting since 1939, right? So it's just for him just to take his own life and just go away, but there's no proof of it or like physical proof. People they want it's going to spark these sorts of theories out there, and the Stalin stuff doesn't help things of that nature. The fact that, and also let's be honest, a lot of Nazis did flee to Argentina.
oh yeah, tons, like
Time
big
when I
high ranking Nazis.
and we say high ranking. Like when we say tons, we're not talking about a couple hundred. We're talking about even a couple thousands.
Yep,
There's thousands that flee and get to Argentina. And there's actually these villages in Argentina that translate to like Little Germany, where people have gone there. If you ever watched that Hunting Hitler show,
yep,
they go to these places, and it is literally like you travel back in time. And there's no like Nazi propaganda everywhere, but it's everyone speaks German there. It's all German dialect. It's all German speaking. They're all descendants of Nazis that for the most part that came over, and this very strong German heritage there that you wouldn't think this is what's in Argentina, but it is.
yep, 100%. So first of all, if you guys haven't seen the show, it's a fun show.
I don't think it's still on anymore. I don't know if it's still
No,
on.
it's over because they kind
I
of,
feel like
well, they were
it's only
able
so
to
much you can
find
get.
so many. They're basically, they proved what we already know and what we already said, which is that tons of high-ranking Nazis escaped.
Well, I mean, you
Two,
have ones like what Joseph Mengele, right, out of
yeah, yeah,
Eichmann. Like these are like like top notch Nazis that like flee there, and some of them live for years.
oh
This
yeah,
is why basically the Israelis start just like, listen, we know they're there, we're going to go kill them. That's what
yep,
the Israelis start doing. That's a whole other podcast.
yes,
We'll get into
a
that.
good one too,
But
actually.
Yeah, that's a
So,
good
so
topic.
this
Look
is
at this.
known as the Gray Wolf theory,
Yeah.
and that stems from a 2014 book called Gray Wolf: The Escape of Adolf Hitler
I think
by.
there was a movie about it too, right?
It
Didn't they
might have
make a
been,
movie?
yeah.
I
It
think
was
like
two
a
British
German movie.
guys that basically make this like docudrama, and this suggests that Hitler and Ava
Gerald
Brown,
Williams and Simon Dustin are the guys,
yes,
the
and
authors.
they basically say that they didn't commit suicide. They escaped to Argentina, and it was a very elaborate escape. Like they were literally walked across these secret bunkers from their bunker.
Yeah.
They got on these U-boat, which took certain Nazis and
Yeah, yeah.
Nazi
Franco
gold.
helped them, right? That Franco
Yeah,
helped them
Franco
go
helped him.
over.
That's the thing. So this U-boat, supposedly from Germany, took him first to like Spain. Spain was considered neutral, however, it was definitely friendly towards the Axis. The idea is that Franco in Spain helped kind of hide them, and then also finance and helped to transport them via U-boat to Argentina. Now, this is not entirely completely unplausible because that is literally how all these other Nazi officials we just spoke about
Yeah,
made it to Argentina. They made it on U-boats. Some Nazi officials actually in 1944 landed in Argentina and started essentially paying off the Argentinian government under Peron like lots of money. Like they set themselves up almost like waiting for these high ranking officials to get there. Like they could build these homes that were built in like these Bavarian, German style in the middle of jungle though with Argentina, and it's almost like they were setting up waiting for this. Well, apparently Hitler moved to this Bavarian style mansion in this like remote and barely accessible spot around 1954. Ava Brown actually winds up leaving him.
yeah. That he
Um,
basically goes broke, right?
yeah, and then he like dies in 1962. So that's
Alone,
the
poor, and
official
mentally ill,
story.
right? And they're
Yes.
saying he probably had at least another wife
Yep.
and one child. That's what the I think the book also
Yeah.
says that he did produce offspring.
But they're saying that also like no real historian would give this story any credibility.
No, most historians are like, well, where's the proof of this? And you do have people, again, if you watch that show, and there's always people like that were alive during that time, young boys, and they say, listen, they saw these U-boats pull in and these Nazis come out, and they probably did. And then a
Yeah.
couple of them say, oh no, I saw Hitler come out.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, and that's where it kind of gets played. Did you see Hitler, or you might have saw a Nazi, but did you see
Yeah.
the Nazi?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like the question. But because there's no doubt it happened that there are Nazis that escaped Argentina. That happened. That's not being disputed by anybody, which is still kind of crazy. Like, I don't understand. Well, I guess I do understand, but like, say this is 1946, and you think Hitler might be alive, or you think there's Nazis hiding out in Argentina, just go in there and get them. Like,
Yeah.
like that's one thing. But again, the world's moving on. The world's doing other things. But you would think that they would just go in there, and eventually that's why I know what the Israelis do to a certain extent. But
But it's credible enough for FBI and the CIA
they
to
send people.
literally
Yeah,
get
they
involved.
want to make sure. They want to make sure if
Yeah.
they're not actually in '44. They actually put out pictures of Hitler. They're saying this is how he might disguise himself. They show him like a
Yep.
goatee,
I saw
right,
those.
like a different haircut, glasses, like all different ways he might try to disguise himself to get out there. Yeah.
And also concurrent with that, I mean, CIA documents were eventually released, but as far as like the 1950s, they were receiving hints and pictures of like, hey, this guy is, you see in this picture in 1954 looks like Hitler. He's alleged to be Hitler. You should check this out. Like, people still had Hitler sightings, and this was something that the CIA didn't necessarily drop right away. Like, they're like, all right, we're gonna follow all leads we possibly can. Meanwhile, while this is all happening, Stalin already knows that like this is a done deal. I mean, Stalin knows right before his own death, like for sure that Hitler's dead. But our own CIA is still like, we're gonna look into this just to be safe. So let's go into the actual teeth. I think in April 2018, this came out in a journal, English publication journal, and that's when you actually have new studies of these teeth that have been locked up in Russia. So this is fairly recent. And first of all, it took months of negotiations between Russia's Secret Service and the Russian state archives, um, and the United States government and the French government, to kind of get access and permission to examine these skull fragments and the bits of teeth that the Russians still hold in their possessions. And they did. They finally were able to do so. Again, this is so super recent. So, few things that they were able to kind of corroborate analysis wise, right? First of all, based on his teeth, they were able to figure out that he was really a vegetarian. Did you read
Yeah.
that? But the
Yeah.
way
Well,
they were
I
able
mean,
to
that
find
was
that
what they
out,
knew anyway. But yeah.
yeah, but the
Well,
way
we
they were
just
able
have.
to find that out is they only had access to these teeth in this place in 2018, and they couldn't take them away or pieces of them or anything else. And as funny as weird as this sounds, the guy that actually did the study kept the gloves, like the silicone or whatever, like
Yeah, they were able to test the gloves, right?
yeah, the gloves, like he like kind of threw them in his bag after he was testing it,
It's a little
and
like
they had
CSI stuff right
particles.
there.
Yeah, they said it was particles of the like tar or whatever off these teeth still left on his gloves, and he was able to come back to the United States and continue these studies, which is, I mean, the science is just insane. But they do find few interesting things with regards to these teeth. First things first, the teeth 100% match to Hitler from 1944
I
scans.
saw that. Yeah.
There was no question
And,
about
and
that.
he said they got his dentist to come and look at it. Yeah.
Yep.
So they're pretty much confirming these are his teeth. But again, if you, and I'm not a good conspiracy person, but I'm talking as that, that devil's advocate of the conspiracy person. They basically said, listen, Hitler ripped his own teeth out. That's one I read too. Like
Yep.
Hitler ripped his own teeth out and left them there so they would think he's dead. And he just got dentures when he went to Argentina.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's always going to be, though, that counter argument to the facts,
Yep.
And how can you prove Hitler didn't do that? Well, prove to me Hitler didn't do that. And you're like, you know what? Really? Fine. I can't prove Hitler didn't rip his own teeth out, like,
Yep.
and leave him in a fire. Like,
There was, again, there's so much stuff like surrounding these teeth, um, because some people claimed, even that we're taking his body out, that he shot himself through his mouth.
mm-hmm.
And that was finally completely discredited here because consulted the teeth further to find, whether there was any traces of gunpowder, lead, and that would indicate that the gunshot went through
Which
the
there would
mouth.
be, which
Yeah, and
even
there was, and
70 years later, they would be there
yep, and there was none. So for a fact, they're like, nope, definitely did not shoot himself through the mouth, which would be consistent with the fact that he supposedly shot himself in the head.
in the head. Yeah.
And then next thing is that's more curious is the blue residue that were left on some of Hitler's original teeth. Remember, he only got like 4 original teeth left, and there was a blue residue left on those teeth. And Ava Brown's, we never had any X-rays for Ava Brown; they didn't exist, so we are unable to really corroborate whether the other set of teeth is Ava Brown's. However, we are able to find out from those teeth that they did belong to a woman, and they did belong to a woman that was Ava Brown's age, and they also, more curious, had this blue residue on their teeth. So as you're looking at these things, this shade of blue, right? Also, ironically, is known as Prussian blue. Was named after a German chemist in Berlin in the early 18th century who discovered this kind of blue residue. And the indication itself is it's called dark blue, which it's called Kronos in ancient Greek, and that's where the substance gets its real name, which is cyanide. So they were able to 100% confirm on those teeth that whoever these 2 sets of teeth belong to definitely took cyanide pills. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
yes, highly likely. I mean,
It adds up. It follows the narrative that history has kind of told. It follows, if you follow the clues, that's what
yep,
it points to, right? And that's
yep,
what most historians are going to support. That's what took place. But you still have these theories because they're going to say, what about the skull itself? What about the sightings? What about, they don't have the actual body? Then you have all these other crazier theories too that came out, not just the moon one, but some other ones that I was reading. One I found kind of odd was that Stalin actually, see, this one, I guess, are we doing some of the crazier ones now?
yeah.
What do
Why
you want
not?
to do?
Go ahead.
I thought this one was kind of interesting that Stalin got Hitler and actually brought him back alive, and that he had him alive in a cage kept underneath the Kremlin,
Oh Jesus.
and that Stalin would just go there and like torture and beat him. Like he kept him like naked in this cage that you couldn't stand or sit in for like years until 1950, until Stalin, even after, up until the point when Stalin himself died, he would just go down there every day and just like torture and beat Hitler. And Hitler basically became feral at one point because it was just,
Jesus.
no human contact and just being tortured daily by Stalin. And that's what they thought, that Stalin just had him, buried underneath the Kremlin, and he would just go and beat Hitler every day. I thought that was an
Wow,
interesting one.
that's
Now,
insane.
if anyone you want to believe that one.
I
You
mean,
know,
right? Versus aliens.
yeah,
Not that
versus
I really
aliens.
believe.
But
I
I
don't
thought
know.
so that was one. You have other ones that there was a couple that he actually came. He went to Argentina. Then from Argentina, he came and lived in the United States, which again makes, I don't know why he would come try to sneak into the United States. He was in Argentina, that he came
Yeah.
here and stuff like that. And he was living in what was it, Montana for a while.
Yeah, I've heard that
There
one
was
too, actually.
there was one there was one there. So it's all of these interesting things. But you have to think of it this way. I was thinking of this when I was reading some of these. Like Hitler was such a megalomaniac, right? That
Yeah,
everything had to revolve around him. You really think if he survived, he was going to keep quiet?
I know. I know.
Like that he was just going to like marry Ava Brown, who he could have married at any time, just have kids and have this normal life and just like hang out in Argentina. That he wouldn't be plotting for his return, that he wouldn't be like rallying troops and having these massive, or that someone would spill the beans somewhere. Like he's just this like quiet farmer now in Argentina or in Montana or something like that. No way. This guy was a megalomaniac that needed, the attention and try to take over the world. Do you think he's suddenly just going to be content in like a
And I
little
mean,
like
Hitler almost
villa?
did take over the world. I mean, he was close to taking
Like,
over the world.
oh, to a certain extent, yeah.
Yeah, I
But
mean, he was
took
hitting
over.
up like
He took
three
over most of
different.
Europe.
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
mean, so he was already like one third through the African continent. He was already tapping into Asia by taking over like one third of Russia, which is huge, Soviet Union.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was kind of scary there for a second.
It was scary. That's why people want to know what's going on with him. That's
Yeah,
why
and I
when
think
he's
that's
finally
also the
defeated,
myth. It's like,
that's the myth. Yeah, it's
yeah,
because he was such this, ultimate evil, right?
yeah.
That you have to find out what happened to him. And there's proof, but you're never gonna satisfy everybody with the proof because there's no actual body. There's no photograph. And there are some pictures. I remember actually, but the pictures are so whatever. Like they could be
Well,
anything.
there's actually an old picture. You probably saw the newsreel of
Yeah,
this, where they found a
yeah,
guy that looked like Hitler, and like you see the Russian soldiers like moving his body around, and there's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
this is again 1945. This is like 2 days after his death. Like, look, we found Hitler, and even at the time, this recording
Film, yeah.
film, thank you, made it back to like President Truman, and hey, like look at this, like this we found Hitler, and people are like, nah, wait, that doesn't look like Hitler. That's probably not Hitler.
And they do announce Hitler's dead. The Stars and Stripes
Yeah,
magazine and stuff like that in newspapers. They say Hitler's dead, shoots himself in bunker. So
yeah,
they're going with that story, and then it starts to change, particularly during like those trials and when they're finding other Nazis. Because some of the Nazis are saying, no, Hitler escaped. Hitler escaped.
yeah,
Like they're saying this. A lot of them, they're saying these were the fanaticals. Like there's a pilot, right, like Peter Bergrum, whatever his name,
yep, yep, yep.
Bergrum. And he's saying, no, I'm the pilot that flew Hitler. But then they did like a psychological eval of this guy. Like, no, he's a narcissistic liar. He's a fanatic. He would say anything to keep the idea that Hitler's alive out there.
So we could kind of put this to rest. We could pretty much say that the fact that Hitler potentially was still alive is basically Soviet fake news. No question about it.
Anyway, well, there's also the Soviet idea that they found Hitler's body, but they burnt it and then dumped the remains in the river, in a German river,
Yeah,
because
in
they
the
didn't want any
70s,
sort.
right?
They didn't want any sort of burial site because they thought
Yeah,
it would be become like a shrine to like Nazis, kind of similar to what happened when the SEAL Team 6 shot and killed Bin Laden,
yep,
right?
yep, yep.
And then they buried the body at sea. And sea was cut because they didn't want to actually have the body anywhere. The idea was then it become a shrine to extremists.
Also, you know what I was doing this research? I came across the fact that Hitler wrote a sequel to Mein Kampf. He wrote a
Yeah,
second book that
yeah,
was never
yeah, yeah,
released.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
had no idea.
We may have heard of the
Um,
Hitler Diaries. I know they're not real, but you ever hear about the Hitler Diaries? That would be an interesting thing too.
yeah, I mean, I
These
didn't
are
hear about
fake. They're
them.
100%. They're 100% fake. But
Huh. I mean, if you guys
interesting
also a
story.
few things that we talked about in this podcast today, if
Yeah,
you guys
a little all over the place today, but not
yeah,
too
but I
much.
feel like it was, we were still on topic. If you guys hit up, just kind of, even if you Google Adolf Hitler's teeth, I mean, there was pictures that were, no, I'm serious. There's pictures that
I know
were
it's just funny.
released.
Hitler's teeth.
I
Hitler's
know, right?
teeth.
It's funny because I was talking to my students today. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to do something on Hitler conspiracies and stuff. And I was like, so I got to like, brush up on a few more things. And my students were like, can you Google that on school Wi-Fi? And I'm like, yeah, it was a historical event. Like, they're like, what, Hitler? Like, there's still that, you know what I mean? Like taboo almost. Yeah, like, oh, you don't talk about it. But I mean, if we don't learn from evil, then, ultimately,
Well, it's
as
Hitler.
they
Like
say,
he's
we
one
might
of
be
those.
bound to repeat it.
He's history's villain.
Yeah.
Definitely the
The
20th
villain.
century villain. Yeah, he's the villain.
Before you made fun of
I
me,
make
what I
I
was
make fun
saying
of
is
you.
you could Google Adolf Hitler's teeth because Russian state archives did release pictures of them. So you could see them. Ta-da. Anyway, well, I guess that concludes our podcast on the death of Adolf Hitler.
And he's dead. He's
He's
dead.
dead.
That's
Yes.
okay.
Conclusively.
We're not saying And I also, I believe he died in the bunker. Okay, I'm not going into
Oh yeah,
these conspiracies
we know he
that
died
he
in the bunker.
escaped to Argentina. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like that. I've always
Although I'll be honest with you, I was a
yes.
sucker for that show. I watched it. And Tom, I want to thank you for actually doing a one, even though you suggested this. And I was surprised because you are so anti any form of conspiracy theory. But thanks for getting out of your comfort zone,
I
Tom.
like facts. I like facts. So this one at least you can kind of debunk
Intertwined,
with some
intertwined.
facts, and it's interesting to talk about because again, some did escape.
Yeah,
So at least there is some thought process of that. They escaped Argentina, not to the moon, not to the
yeah,
moon.
not to the moon.
Okay, not to
No
the moon.
aliens involved.
No, no, no. The Moon Knights were not involved in this endeavor.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in again to listen, and I hope you guys return next week for our next new episode. Until then, you could find us on Facebook. You can find us on historyteacherstalkingpodcast.com. We are out there. Please feel free to email us. Please feel free to subscribe to wherever you listen to this podcast and rate us. Hey, why not? If you like it, rate us. If you don't like it, forget ratings exist. And I hope everyone has an awesome week. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Stay safe, everybody.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.